The lunch rush hit like a tidal wave. The downtown cafe was buzzing with voices, footsteps, and the hiss of espresso machines. Lily darted between tables, balancing trays and flashing polite smiles. Her apron was dusted with flour and sweat, her ponytail barely hanging on, and her mind was already 3 steps ahead. Table 4 needed their check, Table 7 wanted extra oat milk, and someone had just spilled sugar near the register. Then it happened. As she turned the corner toward a man in a pressed gray suit tapping on his phone, her tray tipped. Half a latte slid forward and splashed right across the lapel of his pristine suit. The tray clattered to the floor. Time seemed to pause. A collective gasp swept through the cafe. The man stood slowly, lifting his arm with the theatrics of a movie villain. His voice cut through the noise. "Are you blind or just stupid?" Lily's cheeks burned as she fumbled for napkins. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't see." "You didn't see?" he scoffed, brushing at the wet stain with exaggerated disgust. "This suit cost more than your monthly salary. No, scratch that. Your yearly salary. What are you, some dropout barista with a caffeine addiction and a GED?" A few of his colleagues, all equally sharp-suited and smug, chuckled behind him. One of them even pulled out their phone. Lily's hands trembled as she wiped the table. She didn't cry. Not in front of them. Not today. The man glanced at her name tag. "Lily, figures. Enjoy the rest of your minimum wage career." Then he tossed the soiled napkin on the counter and strutted out, the cafe door slamming shut behind him. Lily stood frozen for a moment. The cafe resumed its noise, but inside her, something shifted. Not just embarrassment, not just anger. It was a seed. A deep, sharp silence took hold in her chest, one that whispered, "Remember his name. Remember his face. Someday the world's going to turn, and you'll be the one holding the coffee." She looked down at the puddle on the floor, then back at the laughing men outside the window, and she smiled. Just a little. The front door's bell jingled as Nathan and his colleagues stepped outside. But the sound didn't fade. It echoed in Lily's ears like an insult chime. She crouched to pick up the empty tray and the crumpled napkins from the floor, knuckles white. Her breathing had steadied, but her heart was still galloping in her chest. Through the wide cafe windows, she saw them. Nathan stood just outside the glass, hands in his pockets, as he laughed like he'd just told the greatest joke of the century. "Did you see her face?" he said, grinning. "Pure panic, like I just canceled her whole existence with one sentence." The others chuckled, one of them adding, "You should have dropped a tip just to see her scramble for it." Nathan snorted. "Tip? She should be tipping me for not filing a complaint. Honestly, she'll be stuck pouring coffee until she's 60, and still spilling it." Lily heard every word. She hadn't meant to listen. She didn't want to give them that power, but their voices were so loud, so cruel, that it was impossible not to. Customers at the window tables shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to notice. But Lily knew they heard too. No one stepped in. No one said a word. She didn't move. She didn't cry. Instead, she stood slowly, brushed off her apron, and turned toward the back counter. Her fingers found the notebook she always kept tucked beneath the register, worn, coffee-stained, and full of half-written ideas for a better life. That day on a blank page near the back, she wrote, "He said I'll always pour coffee. He's right. One day I'll pour it for myself, in a company I own." She closed the notebook with a quiet snap and held it tight against her chest. Her eyes burned, not from tears but from fire, the kind of fire that doesn't flicker out. Lily had always known life wasn't fair. She'd faced worse than spilled drinks and rich jerks. But this moment, it did something different. It focused her. Out of the corner of her eye, she watched Nathan toss his coffee in a trash bin without taking a sip. Then with a smirk, he disappeared down the street with his entourage trailing behind him. That smirk stayed with her. That voice. That sentence. She'll be stuck pouring coffee forever. Not if she had anything to do with it. The cafe emptied out just after 10 p.m. The last regulars shuffled out with tired smiles, and Lily locked the door behind them with a soft click. The chairs were stacked, the floors mopped, and the espresso machine finally fell silent after a day of constant steam and hissing. Outside, the city was winding down. But inside Lily, she was just getting started. She pulled off her apron and slumped into the back booth, the same one she always used during closing shifts. The lights were dimmed, the windows fogged, and the world felt far enough away for her to breathe. From her bag, she retrieved her tattered notebook. She flipped past scribbled to-do lists, half-written poems, and doodles drawn during slow hours. And then she stopped on the fresh page where she'd written earlier, "He said I'll always pour coffee. They'll never laugh forever." Her pen hovered over the paper, then began to move again. "They laugh today, but they won't tomorrow. One day they'll read my name on a building." She underlined it twice. For the next hour, Lily didn't scroll through social media or watch shows like most of her friends after a shift. She opened her old secondhand laptop, logged onto a free Wi-Fi network from the apartment upstairs and typed, "How to start a business with no money." Dozens of tabs followed: articles, YouTube videos, entrepreneur forums, TED Talks, financial literacy blogs. She didn't understand most of the words: venture capital, equity share, scaling strategies, but she copied them all down, determined to learn them one by one. She had no business degree, no connections, no wealthy parents, but she had time and grit. On her break the next day, she watched a video about bootstrapping startups while chewing a stale croissant. During her split shift, she downloaded a free PDF about branding and customer psychology, and at night, while others slept, she studied. The cafe might still be her reality, but it wasn't her destination. Every night shift added to a silent promise. Not a dream, a plan. The next time someone mocked her for being a barista, she wanted to have a reply they'd never forget. "Thank you. That job bought my company." It was a rainy Tuesday morning when Lily found the envelope in her mailbox. No return address, just her full name, handwritten in ink that had begun to smudge from the drizzle. She turned it over twice before opening it. No bills, no advertisements, just a folded piece of thick paper and a yellowing photograph tucked inside. The photo made her breath catch. Her high school classroom. The young girl in the second row, smiling behind thick curls and a chipped desk, was her. And standing beside her was a woman with silver-rimmed glasses and a gentle but unyielding stare. Ms. Carter. Lily hadn't heard that name in years. She unfolded the letter carefully, heart pounding. "Dear Lily, if you're reading this, then I'm long gone. And knowing you, you're still working harder than you should for less than you deserve. I always knew you were meant for more. I don't know where life has taken you, but I do know this. Strength like yours doesn't vanish. It waits, it prepares. Enclosed is a small amount I've set aside. It's not much, but it's meant for one thing only: to build. Build something that is yours. Something that speaks louder than the ones who ever made you feel small. With pride always, Miss Evelyn Carter." Lily's hands trembled as she pulled out the second paper. A check, dated 2 months ago, $12,500. It wasn't enough to buy a building or launch a chain, but it was enough for something. Her breath quickened. Rent for a pop-up cart, a bulk coffee order, a simple website, maybe even a part-time designer for a logo. It was enough to take her research and turn it into action. It was as if Ms. Carter had been watching all this time, as if she knew the fire Lily was hiding behind polite smiles and tired nods. The woman who once taught her Shakespeare had now handed her a blank stage. Lily looked at the photo again. She remembered the day it was taken. Ms. Carter had made each student write down where they wanted to be in 10 years. Most said college or married. Lily had written, "I want to own something that changes people's mornings." She had forgotten that. Until now. She pressed the photo against her chest and whispered, "Thank you." Then she grabbed her notebook and flipped to a new page. In bold letters she wrote, "Bean Bloom. Morning starts here." It wasn't just a cafe anymore. It was the start of a legacy. The co-working space smelled like burnt toast and ambition. Young entrepreneurs paced the hallway rehearsing taglines. Laptops glowed with pitch decks, and dreams clung to coffee-stained tables like Post-it notes. Half written and half hoped. Lily sat in the far corner, palms sweating over her borrowed Chromebook. On the screen, a rough prototype of her startup presentation. Slides she'd stitched together using a free trial of a design app, mocked up between night shifts and early mornings. Bean Bloom. A mobile cafe for a new generation, affordable, local sourced, designed for movement, because not everyone wakes up in the same place every day. She rehearsed her lines under her breath. We're not just serving coffee, we're delivering momentum, connection, morning that finds you. Was it cheesy? Maybe, but it was hers. She was pitching at a local startup seed event, a mini makers meet with a room full of hopefuls and half-listening early-stage investors. Most of them weren't even looking for coffee ideas. Tech, fintech, medtech, anything but actual, physical beans. Still, she stood up when her number was called. 5 minutes, one shot. Her voice wavered at first. She wasn't a polished speaker, no MBA, no Silicon Valley swagger. But her words had one thing others didn't: truth. She told them about the people who rush through mornings with no time, no warmth, just motion. She told them about dignity in service and how a cup of coffee can make someone feel seen. She told them about her old cafe job and the man who told her she'd never be more than a girl in an apron. She ended with a quiet line. I don't want to serve coffee for the rest of my life. I want to serve change, one morning at a time. The applause was polite. One man whispered something to his colleague and smirked. Another barely glanced up from his phone. Then came the rejections, one after another. Too small, not scalable, no traction, no exit potential. Lily smiled through all of them. She expected this. Rejection wasn't new. But as she packed up her things, a woman in a red blazer approached her. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. You're not the best speaker in the room, she said bluntly, but you're the first one who made me want to drink what you're selling. Lily blinked. Sorry. The woman held out a card. Name's Dana. I used to work in franchise development. You've got raw material and grit. I've got capital and experience. Let's talk. A week later, the deal was real. A modest investment, a mentorship clause, and enough money to get the first Bean Bloom mobile card off the ground. As Lily signed the agreement, her hands shook, but not from fear, from the weight of momentum. She wasn't just dreaming anymore. She was building. The first Bean Bloom cart launched on a crisp Saturday morning at the corner of 6th and Halsted, wedged between a yoga studio and a co-working space. It was barely more than a repurposed food truck, painted matte white with hand-drawn illustrations of sprouting coffee plants, and the slogan, Mornings That Find You. Lily stood behind the counter, apron clean, hair tied back, hands slightly trembling, but not from fear. This time it was adrenaline. The cart's espresso machine hissed to life. Steam rose. The day began. By noon, the line stretched past the bike racks. Customers leaned on electric scooters, took selfies with their oat lattes, and tagged number Bean Bloom like it was the newest boutique brand in town. And it was. Lily hadn't just built a cart. She had built a movement. Her brand was different. She partnered with small, women-owned farms in Guatemala and Ethiopia and printed QR codes on each cup that told the story behind every bean. Her receipts were paperless. Her loyalty program worked through an app she helped code with a college student she met on Reddit. Each drink had optional mood tags: grounded, bright, bold. The city's freelancers, creatives, and early tech workers flocked to her, not just for the caffeine, but for the vibe. No giant menus, no corporate upselling, just good coffee, honest service, and energy that felt alive. Within 2 months, she launched her second cart on the other side of the city. 3 months later, Bean Bloom was featured in a local magazine. The morning revolution is mobile. Meet Lily Hart, the woman behind the brew. She still worked the cart herself at least twice a week. It grounded her, reminded her of where she started. And every time someone said, I love this place, it doesn't feel like a chain, she'd smile quietly to herself, because she knew it would be a different kind of chain, built with care, not control. She caught wind that one of her old cafe customers, an investor who once brushed her off, now waited in line at Bean Bloom every Thursday morning. He didn't recognize her, but she remembered him, and she served him with the same calm voice she'd used back when she was just a barista. Only now she poured the coffee from her own company. Lily wasn't a girl in an apron anymore. She was the founder of a brand that was blooming across the city. It aired on a Tuesday night, tucked between a local sports segment and the weather report. From spill to startup, how one young woman is brewing change in the city. Lily didn't even know it was going live. One of her regulars had pitched the story to Channel 8 without telling her. She only found out when her phone started buzzing nonstop during a staff meeting. She watched the clip later, sitting cross-legged on her tiny studio floor, a half-finished espresso in one hand and a stunned look on her face. The segment opened with slow shots of bean bloom carts surrounded by crowds, upbeat music underscoring every steaming cup and warm smile. Then came the voiceover. Meet Lily Hart. Just last year, she was working night shifts at a chain cafe downtown. Today, she runs one of the fastest growing mobile coffee startups in the city, founded on purpose, powered by grit, and brewed with heart. They showed footage of her working behind the cart, laughing with customers, pouring latte art with hands that once shook carrying trays for minimum wage. They didn't mention Nathan, but he was watching. Across town in the sleek glass tower of Wilton and Grant Consulting, Nathan Grant sat reclined in a leather chair, scrolling through the clip with a smirk curling at one side of his mouth. He wore a tailored navy suit and sipped whiskey from a tumbler he didn't even finish. His assistant had forwarded the video with the subject line, "Thought you'd find this familiar. Didn't she spill coffee on you once?" Nathan watched the clip again. He recognized the woman immediately, the same face, the same eyes. Except now, instead of apologizing for an accident, she spoke confidently to a reporter. "I don't believe in small dreams. I believe in slow ones, ones you grow from the ground up. Coffee is just how I show it." Nathan scoffed, tossing the tumbler onto a coaster with a dull clink. "Cute," he muttered. "It won't last." To him, it was a novelty story, a feel-good underdog tale that would fizzle out once real business kicked in. He'd seen a dozen just like it, passion projects that flared up and burned out under pressure. Still, something about her voice, measured, clear, purposeful, lingered. And that name? Bean Bloom. It was everywhere lately, on reusable cups in the subway, on influencer reels. Even one of his junior analysts had a Bean Bloom sticker on her laptop. Nathan leaned back, trying to ignore the quiet twist in his stomach. It wasn't fear, not yet, but it wasn't comfort either. He glanced at the skyline through his floor-to-ceiling windows. She was still small, still niche. But now people were watching her, and so was he. It started with a headline tucked inside a business blog. Wilton and Grant faces internal shakeup as a legacy account slip. Lily might have ignored it until she recognized the name. Grant, as in Nathan Grant. Curious, she clicked through. The article described how Wilton and Grant Consulting had lost several major contracts over the last quarter. Layoffs were quietly underway. Their portfolio of small service-based franchises, cafes, laundromats, salons, had been bleeding money for months. One of those cafes was the exact chain Lily had once worked for, the one where she spilled the coffee, where her dreams were once mopped off the floor. Her fingers froze on the trackpad. That place had been a footnote in Nathan's empire, but to her it was once her whole world. Now, it was vulnerable, and for the first time, within reach. She spent the next 3 days deep diving into public financial records, revenue charts, lease data, board members, profit reports. Dana, her investor-turned-mentor, helped her read between the lines. "They're not just bleeding cash," Dana muttered one night, scrolling through the numbers. "They're bleeding culture. Customers are leaving. Staff turnover's insane. They've got no identity, no soul." Lily tapped her notebook with a pen. "What if we gave it one?" Dana raised a brow. "You want to compete?" Lily shook her head. I want to buy it. Restructure, rebrand, reclaim." Dana stared at her for a long moment, then smirked. "You really are the storm they didn't see coming." Over the next few weeks, Lily built her boldest pitch yet. She contacted a silent investor who had once passed on her mobile cart but now wanted a piece of whatever Bean Bloom touches. With Dana's guidance, she formed a holding company designed for acquisitions, legal paperwork, NDAS, strategic silence. And then, quietly, almost poetically, she made an offer to the parent corporation Wilton and Grant was preparing to offload. They were eager to sell, too eager. When the official documents arrived at her desk, Lily couldn't help but pause. The name of the cafe chain, once a badge of her humiliation, was now printed in bold ink right above hers. Transfer of operational ownership to Ms. Lily Hart. She ran her fingers across the page. She had no interest in preserving what it was. She wanted to reshape what it could be. This wasn't revenge, it was redirection. And Nathan? He didn't even know who was buying it yet. But he would, very soon. The conference room was cold in that artificial, corporate way. Polished wood, untouched water bottles, and the stale scent of old ambition. A long table stretched between Lily and 6 members of the board, all with anxious eyes and tight smiles. She wore a deep navy blazer, hair neatly pulled back, and no visible emotion on her face. But her heart? It pounded like a drum under her skin. Across from her sat the same executives who once ignored emails like hers, the ones who used to own the chain where she'd scrubbed counters for tips. Now they were leaning in, nervous, eager, desperate. One of them cleared his throat. "Miss Hart, we've reviewed your offer. It's generous." Another, older and more wrinkled than his crisp suit suggested, chimed in cautiously. "We had higher numbers in mind initially, but the market's, well, you've seen the state of things. Your offer includes a buyout, rebranding support, and employee retention clauses. Honestly, it's the best proposal we've received." Lily nodded once. Calm, controlled. "I'm not here to gut it," she said. "I'm here to rebuild it, but only if I have full creative and operational control. No legacy interference, no red tape. I don't want your brand, I want the bones." A pause fell over the room, then slow nods, cautious glances exchanged. They were sinking, and she was their lifeboat. "We accept," said the chairman, "pending signatures." A folder slid across the table. Lily opened it, scanning the pages. The ink seemed to glow on the contract's front page. Transfer of ownership. Heartbloom Holdings, LLC. Acquisition, Brewmore Cafe Group, 52 locations. Her fingers didn't tremble as she signed. They etched. It was done. She was now the owner of the very chain that once represented her lowest point. The same place where Nathan Grant had laughed in her face, humiliated her, and walked away like her life was disposable. Except now, she owned every counter, every register, every stained uniform. As the board members filed out, one of them lingered near the door. "If I may ask, why us? Of all the brands out there?" Lily looked up, eyes steady. "Because I started here, and I know exactly where it went wrong." The man gave a slow, uncertain nod before leaving her alone in the room. She stood there for a moment, silent. Just her and the contract. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't about Nathan anymore. It was about owning her story, start to finish, not rewriting the past, but reclaiming it. Tomorrow she'd announce the transition. Next week she'd begin the rebrand. And soon she'd walk back into the cafe where it all began. But this time, she wouldn't be carrying a tray. The bell above the cafe door gave the same soft chime it always had. But this time, when Lily stepped through, everything changed. It was the same place. Same walls, same dull beige tiles, same hum of the espresso machine. The chalkboard menu hadn't been updated in weeks. A single bulb flickered near the corner booth she used to clean every closing shift. But none of it mattered, because Lily wasn't the same girl who used to wipe down tables and apologize for spilled orders. She was in a tailored black suit, heels clicking against the worn floor, her hair pulled back into a sleek bun. No apron, no notepad, just presence, quiet, controlled, and commanding. The chatter near the register stopped. A few baristas looked up from behind the counter and froze. One of them, a girl barely out of high school, whispered, "Is that the new owner?" The shift supervisor stepped forward awkwardly, wiping his hands on his apron. "Sorry, miss. This area's for staff only." Then he paused. Recognition slowly filled his eyes. "Wait, Lily?" She turned toward him and gave a single nod. "Hi, Mark." He blinked twice as if trying to connect the version of her he remembered. Messy bun, exhausted eyes, sleeves rolled to the elbow. To the woman standing in front of him now. "I thought you—" He trailed off. "Left," she finished for him. "I did, and now I'm back. Different role." Someone dropped a spoon. No one bent to pick it up. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of the very booth where it all started, where she spilled the latte on Nathan Grant, where he laughed and told her she'd never be more than a barista. She stepped forward slowly, scanning the space. Her gaze wasn't bitter. It was calculating, measured, like an architect inspecting the bones of an old house before building something entirely new. The cafe manager, an older man she didn't recognize, hurried out from the office. "Can I help you?" Lily reached into her leather bag and pulled out a folder. She opened it with calm precision and slid it across the counter. "This is the transfer of ownership. Effective today, this location, and everyone like it, is now under the direction of Hart Bloom Holdings." He blinked. I didn't hear anything from corporate." "You just did," she said with a polite smile. The room remained silent. A few of the employees looked at one another, unsure whether to panic or cheer. But one thing was clear to everyone watching. She wasn't here to clock in. She was here to take charge. Lily turned back toward the staff. "Things are going to change around here. Better pay, real training, a brand people are proud to work for." She paused. "No one gets mocked for doing their job. Not under my roof." And just like that, she walked behind the counter, not to serve, but to reclaim. No apron, no apologies. Only purpose. This wasn't a return. It was a reversal. Nathan arrived 10 minutes late, as always. He strolled into the building with a phone pressed to his ear, barking some half-hearted excuse to a junior associate. His suit was, as usual, sharp, his ego even sharper. The receptionist barely got a word in before he waved her off. "I've got a 2:30 with the new operations head," he said with a smirk. "Probably some HR puppet trying to play CEO." She opened her mouth to correct him, then thought better of it. Nathan headed down the hall, humming to himself. The office space had changed since he was last here. Cleaner, brighter. The logo on the wall now read Bean Bloom, scripted in minimalist gold. It annoyed him. At the end of the hall, he found the door he'd been instructed to report to. On it, a simple black plaque with engraved silver letters, CEO, Lily Hart. He stopped. The smile fell, but only for a moment. Then he let out a dry laugh. "No way," he muttered. "Has to be a joke." He knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for an answer. And there she was, behind the desk, calm, composed, dressed in the same sharp black suit she'd worn to the cafe, only now lit by sunlight filtering through corner office windows. Lily looked up from a stack of papers. No surprise in her eyes. No bitterness either. Just presence. "Nathan," she said evenly, "thanks for coming in." He stood there, caught between confusion and disbelief. Then, recovering his arrogance like a safety blanket, he leaned on the doorframe. "Cute prank. Seriously, though, where's the actual CEO? I was told this was a restructuring meeting." "You were told correctly," Lily replied, rising to her feet. "Please, sit." He didn't move right away. Something in her voice had changed. Calmer than he remembered, but deeper. He finally stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind him. He sat stiffly, trying to regain control. "So you're... what? A figurehead? They gave you a title to look progressive." Lily tilted her head, then reached into a drawer. She pulled out a glossy document, slid it across the table. "Acquisition papers," she said. "Full purchase, including this location, including the staff you once managed." She paused. "Including the booth where you told a teenage girl she'd never be more than a barista." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You held on to that?" "No," she said. "I let it go. Then I bought it." Silence. The sunlight caught the edge of her desk, reflecting off the plaque on her nameplate. Lily Hart, Chief Executive Officer. "Why am I here?" he asked, voice cooler now. Lily folded her hands. "Because as of this morning, Wilton and Grant has no operational say in this business. But your name was still attached to a few consultancy clauses. I wanted to end that in person." Nathan gave a tight smile. "You're firing me." "No, Lily replied softly. I'm releasing you. She stood again, tall and steady. You're no longer part of the story, and neither is the version of me you remember. He opened his mouth and closed it again. She didn't wait for a reply. The elevator's to your left. As he walked out, she returned to her desk, flipped open her notebook, and began outlining the next phase of the rebrand. She didn't watch him go. She had better things to do now. It was standing room only in the break room. The staff from 3 nearby branches had gathered after receiving a message marked, "Mandatory team meeting, led by new ownership." Whispers filled the space. Some were nervous, others curious. Many were simply exhausted, used to meetings that said a lot and changed nothing. But when Lily stepped into the room, everything went quiet. She didn't walk in with fanfare. No entourage, no clipboard, just a simple black blouse, clean lines, and steady eyes that had once looked out from behind a steaming register. She stood by the whiteboard, her presence grounding the room like a slow breath. Hi, she began. Most of you don't know me. Some might remember me as the girl who used to refill napkin dispensers and mop behind the fridges at the old Brewmore. That was me, years ago. A few heads turned. One barista whispered, "No way." Lily smiled gently and continued. I used to clock in here for minimum wage, then go home and study until sunrise. I spilled coffee. I got yelled at. I cried in that restroom right behind you. Twice in 1 week. A quiet chuckle rippled through the room. But the thing is, I never hated this place. I hated how people were treated in this place, how effort was ignored, how dignity was optional. And I promised myself, if I ever got the chance, I'd change that. She paused, eyes scanning the room. Faces looked up, curious now, waiting. You all work hard. I've been where you're standing. I know how tired your feet are at the end of a double. I know the sting when a customer snaps their fingers or mocks your job like it's nothing. But your work is not nothing? Her voice didn't rise, but it deepened with conviction. You create the first warmth some people feel all day. You make mornings softer. You give people a reason to keep moving. And that deserves respect. Silence. Then slow, genuine nods. So here's what's changing, she said. Better wages, paid training, management that actually listens, and no more of that fake smile through the insults culture. She walked over to the front counter, placed her hand on it. This isn't just a cafe. It's a beginning point for our customers and for all of you. She looked directly at the barista nearest her. Then she said it, the line that would be quoted on walls, press releases, and employee manuals for years to come. A good leader doesn't belittle. A great one remembers where they came from. The room burst into applause. Not polite, forced clapping, but real, spontaneous, spine-tingling energy. Some even whistled. A few clapped with tearful smiles. Lily simply nodded, heart full but steady. This wasn't just her moment, it was theirs. Nathan showed up unannounced. Wearing his usual smug smile, he strolled past reception like he still owned the place. Phone in one hand, sunglasses in the other. He barely acknowledged the staff as he made his way toward the corner office that, until recently, had answered to his name. He didn't knock. I figured we could talk, he said casually, leaning against the doorframe. Like professionals. You know, clear the air. Lily didn't look up right away. She was reviewing a renovation blueprint, a redesign for the flagship store. Sleek, modern, human. When she finally raised her eyes, they were unreadable. There's nothing unclear, Nathan, she said. Your contract was terminated. He stepped inside anyway. Right, but we both know this was personal. I mean, come on. You're firing me over something that happened years ago? You were a barista, Lily. People say stupid things in cafes all the time. He said it with a laugh, like it was nothing. Lily stood, calm, measured. Every movement felt like it echoed. This isn't about spilled coffee or stupid comments. This is about who you are. You mock people beneath you. You inflate people above you. And when things go wrong, you point fingers instead of lifting hands. Nathan's smirk twitched. Okay, look, maybe I was a jerk, but I know this business. I have connections, investors, media reach. You need people like me. No, Lily said flatly. I need people with integrity. She walked around the desk, now standing face to face with the man who once laughed while she knelt to wipe a floor he walked on. You're not just bad for business, Nathan. You're bad for people. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Nathan looked away for the first time. You really think you can run all this without the old guard? Lily tilted her head, almost amused. Nathan, I am the new guard. She opened a folder and handed him a termination letter with his name stamped across the top. Security will escort you out if you linger. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit, slower than he came in. No swagger, no snark, just the hollow silence of someone realizing the game changed and they lost. Lily returned to her desk, glancing once at the closed door behind him. Then she sat, pulled up the plans again, and got back to work. Because this story didn't end with firing the man who once mocked her. That was just a footnote. The elevator doors slid shut behind Nathan with a soft hiss. He didn't look back, didn't argue, didn't smirk. He just left. The silence he left in his wake was louder than any insult he'd ever thrown. Lily stood alone in her office for a moment, her fingers resting on the edge of the desk. The buzz of the building returned slowly. Phones ringing, espresso machines humming, the rhythm of real work resuming like a steady heartbeat. But something tugged at her, a whisper of unfinished business. She walked downstairs, heels quiet on the familiar tile, past the counter, past the new chalkboard with the Bean Bloom logo, toward the old employee room where lockers lined one faded wall. Her locker was still there, number 12, scratched from years of rushed closings and tired mornings. She hadn't opened it since the acquisition. Out of habit, her fingers traced the dent in the metal near the latch, and then she saw it, taped neatly to the door, folded into a perfect square. A note, plain, no name, just her own handwriting from years ago, barely visible behind it, still scribbled across the door in fading black marker. One day, this won't be my only door. She peeled the paper off slowly. Inside, a single sentence, written in uneven, heavy pen strokes. I was wrong. N. No excuses, no explanations, no clever wording. Just 3 words from a man who once thought she was invisible. 3 words that arrived not in a press release or apology email, but in the place where she had once stored her hopes between shifts. Lily stared at the note for a long moment. Then she folded it once, neatly, carefully, and tucked it into the back of her notebook. She didn't tear it up, didn't tape it to the wall, didn't even tell anyone about it. She simply walked back out. Because she didn't need Nathan's approval, she didn't need his guilt. But maybe, just maybe, he needed that silence to become someone new. And that was enough. As she stepped out of the room, a young barista looked up and smiled nervously. Everything okay, Ms. Hart? Lily nodded. Better than okay. Because the girl who used to cry in the break room had become the woman who now owned the building. And some things were finally at peace. The mural went up on a Sunday. Paint cans lined the sidewalk outside the flagship Bean Bloom store, brushes resting in plastic cups, music floating from a Bluetooth speaker near the curb. Passers-by slowed down to watch as soft strokes of deep green, amber gold, and rich brown came together on the once blank exterior wall. At the center, in bold hand-lettered script, were 5 words: Respect brews success. Underneath, a stylized illustration of a hand offering a steaming cup. Not from behind a counter, but from beside it. Equal footing, shared space. Lily stood back, hands in her pockets, watching the final touches go up with quiet pride. She hadn't painted it herself. She had hired a local artist who used to be a Bean Bloom customer and once sketched on napkins between job interviews. Now his work would greet every employee and customer before they walked through the door. Inside, the cafe looked different too. Gone were the fluorescent lights and peeling menus. In their place, soft wood tones, plants hanging in corners, handwritten notes from customers framed along the walls. Every employee wore a name tag with 1 extra line under their name. Ask me how I got here. Because at Bean Bloom, everyone had a story, and Lily's was the first one told during training. She started right where you're standing, new hires heard on their first day. She cleaned the same tables, burned her hand on that same espresso machine, got laughed at in that same booth. And now, she owns all of it. It wasn't a legend told to intimidate, it was a reminder. No one is just anything, not just a barista, not just a girl with a notebook, not just a mistake away from greatness. In the months that followed, Bean Bloom grew. New carts, new stores, new hires. But the heart of the company never changed. Every time Lily visited a new location, she asked the same question. How do your people feel? Not, how's the revenue? Not, how's the branding? But, how are they treated? Because she had learned early. Numbers fill bank accounts, but respect fills rooms. One afternoon, a teenager working her first job stood staring at the mural during break. She turned to Lily, who still made surprise visits, no entourage, and asked, "Did he really say you'd never be more than a barista?" Lily smiled. "He did." The girl blinked. "What happened to him?" Lily thought for a moment, then shrugged gently. "Doesn't matter.